Lesson number 9, liberty and freedoms. In this lesson, we're going to learn about the word liberty, what it means, and what it has to do with being a U.S. citizen. So objectives are the things you'll be able to do by the end of this lesson. You'll be able to define liberty, or say what it is, and give examples of freedoms that we have today. You'll be able to describe natural rights and how they're expressed. That means rights that we're all born with. So natural rights are things you have when you were born. Students will evaluate what a right is and what a right is not. So you'll be able to see certain things and say whether it's a right or something else. That'll make more sense when we get towards the end of the lesson. The questions are the things you'd be able to answer by the end of the lesson are: what is liberty? What liberties do we have today? And how did specific historical figures and documents shape the Constitution? Before we get into what liberty is, just as a quick review, we're going to look at what civics is. Remember, civics is the study of citizenship and government. It's not the study of just government. It's more a focus on what our role is in the government and our relationship with the government. It's much more about that than it is just the government by itself. So yes, we do learn about the government quite a bit, but that's because we're trying to understand the government so we can better understand our relationship and what it's supposed to be with that government. And one of the most important parts about that relationship is liberty. So what is it? Liberty is kind of a fancy way of saying freedom. Liberty deals with our individual rights, the things that we have that shouldn't be taken away from us as human beings. I'll read the definition to you. A citizen has the right to act, think, and believe as he or she wants without government interference. These are our freedoms. These are the things we can do and the government can't take away from us. So we have the right to act, think, and believe as he or she, as we want without government interference. You might be saying to yourself, well, then I don't have liberty because I can't just do whatever I want to do. If it says the right to act, if I feel like I want to steal something and I can't exercise my right to do that because it's against the law. So you have liberty within reason, meaning that you can act, think, and believe as you want to, but it can't violate anybody else's liberty. You can't go against someone else's right to act, think, and believe as he or she sees fit, because then that violates someone else's liberty. So we do have laws that kind of restrict liberty a little bit, but we're going to talk about that more as well. So just some very basic examples of liberty. I'll read them to you. As Ted is walking down the street, he decides that he doesn't want to go to the library, but instead to the video game store. Ted making the decision to go to the video game store instead of the library was his liberty. He made that decision. It was his choice. It's what he wanted to do. So he was exercising his freedom of liberty. Sally goes out to eat for lunch. She can choose any restaurant she would like to eat at. So we have the liberty to choose in the United States. If we want to eat at Denny's, we can eat at Denny's. If we'd rather go to McDonald's, we can go to McDonald's. We're not forced to eat or go to any specific store or restaurant. That's an example of liberty, having the freedom to choose. Mary shouts out at a football game that she doesn't like the president. She can do this because of her freedoms and liberty. So again, that's Mary making a decision to do that. Would people turn around and look at Mary and think that she was kind of crazy for shouting about the president at a football game? Maybe, but she has a liberty to do that. It's a right and it can't be taken away from her. So we talked about a little bit earlier natural rights, and I said those are things that you're born with. Liberty's part of that, and there's two other ones that I want you guys to know about. So these are things that you are born with. They're your natural rights because you're born with them. You have the right to live life. You have the right to act as you see fit. Liberty, that's what we were talking about. You can act and believe what you want to believe. You have the right to keep what you make or exchange it freely for things others make. That's our right to property. So we have the right to have things, to acquire things or get things, and give them to other people as we see fit. Remember, all this has to stay within basic law. So you might be saying to yourself, well, this sounds great. I can just do whatever I want if I have liberty. Remember, like we said earlier, you have liberty to a certain point. If you exercising your liberty, you doing whatever you want to do, essentially, if that gets in the way or hurts somebody else in any way, you can't do that, because then you're violating that person's liberty. So, for example, stealing something. That's a really basic example here. You can't just steal things, because that would violate someone else's liberty. Even if you want to steal something, you're at liberty to do so. I mean, you've made the decision because it's something that you want to do. You can't steal something because that violates someone else's liberty. That goes against their rights and their freedoms as a human being. You're taking away their property, which is one of the natural rights that we talked about, so therefore you're violating their liberty. Give you an example. Let's say Sally likes blowing bubbles in public. So she sits there and she's constantly blowing bubbles in public. She's at liberty to do that. She wants to sit there and blow bubbles. But Ted walks by and he doesn't like bubbles. He doesn't like sticking to something. And he doesn't like having to breathe them in. So Ted gets bubbles blown right into his face by Sally. When Sally walks by Ted blowing bubbles in his face, she has violated or broken, failed to respect his right to not blow or breathe in bubbles. This is a crazy example. So by Sally doing that, she's exercising her liberty because she feels like blowing bubbles. But the second one of those bubbles touches Ted, she's violating Ted's liberty because Ted doesn't want that. He doesn't want bubbles in his face, so therefore his liberty is being violated. We always have liberty. Not always, most people would argue. In the assignment that goes with this, you're going to look at an act, which is like a law called the Patriot Act, which some of you might have heard of, and it's been highly debated whether or not this law should be in place. And you're going to look at whether or not liberty has been violated by this law, by this act. The Patriot Act was enacted or passed by Congress on October 26, 2001, at the request of President George Bush in response to the terrorist attacks of September 11th. What did it do? It heightened the government's ability to legally tap telephone lines, intercept internet messages, and all messages that are relevant to surveillance cases, not just those suspected terrorists. So, to kind of sum it up, the Patriot Act gave the government a lot more power when it came to monitoring U.S. citizens and people living in the United States. It made it much easier for the government to basically look and see what we were doing. Some people think that this violates our liberty, that it goes against some of our basic rights, and some people think that it's necessary because they're only using it to go after people who are doing bad stuff, so the rest of us shouldn't mind because the government's just trying to protect us. So when you do the homework that's underneath this lesson, I want you to think about liberty, what it means, and you're going to have a special focus on whether or not the Patriot Act goes against that idea of liberty. Remember, liberty is the freedom to just kind of do what you want to do as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Make sure you answer the questions that are underneath this video, and after that, you can go on to the homework assignment. Good luck.